Robert Baden-Powell. Scouting is nothing less than applied Christianity. The origin of Robert Baden-Powell's faith can be traced back to the upbringing he received within his family. His father was an Anglican priest and professor of geometry at Oxford University. He died when Robert was 3 years old, but Robert inherited his father's love of the Bible. He also had a great love of nature, which was fostered by his mother. When she became a widow, she used to take her children on long exploratory walks in the countryside, awakening in them curiosity regarding animals and plants, and guiding them to observe and admire nature. A good student, he won a scholarship to Charterhouse Public School. He enjoyed adventure holidays in his youth with his brothers. They would go yachting and canoeing. His knowledge of scouting was honed during these expeditions. They would camp in the woods near his school, even though this was out of bounds to students, and cook on a campfire. He went on to join the army in 1876, when he became lieutenant in the 13th Hussars in India. He had an eventful career, and in 1896, he found himself fighting in the Second Matabele War in 1899 in a region that we now know of as Zimbabwe. During this period, he became recognized as a gifted scout, what we would now refer to as deep reconnaissance. He owed his growing knowledge in this area to his American friend Frederick Russell Burnham. This man had learnt extensive woodcraft skills from some of the pioneers of the Old West and from the native Indians, and he taught these skills to Baden-Powell. It was in Matabele land that Baden-Powell started to wear Burnham's Montana-style peaked Stetson, which would later be used by the Boy Scouts. He also carried a staff and wore a scarf, both of which later became part of a Boy Scouts equipment. After the Matabele Land War, he was posted to India, and it was here that he started teaching scouting to young soldiers in his regiment. He wanted each man to be an efficient, reliable individual, even if he lost his officer. In 1899, he wrote a little book called Aids to Scouting for NCOs and Men. It taught observation, tracking, and deduction. The book was finalized in Mafeking, Africa, where Baden-Powell was posted later in 1899. Mafeking was a small railway town which had to be defended from the Boers during the Boer War. It's worth dwelling on this event because it illustrates the character of the man. Baden-Powell actually seemed to enjoy the siege of Mafeking, regarding it as a great adventure. He organised the defence of the town from the besieging Boers and held it for 217 days. He had only between 1,000 and 1,500 men to defend the town against 8,000 or 9,000 Boers. Through good organisation and ingenuity, he managed to give the appearance of having more men than he actually did, and held the town until it was relieved by a relief column. The siege highlights Baden-Powell's great qualities of preparedness and organisation, qualities that he would later instill into the scouting movement. The siege also involved the use of boys below fighting age, carrying out duties such as carrying messages and acting as lookouts. These boys were known as the Mafeking Cadet Corps. Baden-Powell was impressed by the boys and later mentioned them in the opening pages of his 1908 book, Scouting for Boys. He also later said that he made the discovery that boys, when trusted and relied upon, were just as capable as men and just as reliable. When he returned to England in 1903, he found that his book, Aids to Scouting, was being used to train boys. He was asked to rewrite the book specifically for boys rather than soldiers. To test out this idea, he got together a group of boys from all walks of society and took them camping on Brownsea Island, Dorset, in 1907. He taught the boys camping, cooking, woodcraft, observation and boatmanship, among other things. He also taught them patriotism and chivalry. The boys loved it all, and so Baden-Powell wrote the handbook, Scouting for Boys. The scouting movement took off, and in 1910 he resigned from the army to devote all his time to the new movement. It wasn't long before the Girl Guides movement was started as well. So, looking back, it's difficult for us to remember how revolutionary this was to allow young people to go out and get themselves dirty and enjoy being out in the countryside and cook for themselves, and to be freed from the rather stuffy society that they were in at the time. So it really was freedom for young people at that time. Anyway, I know that some people will be surprised at Robert Baden-Powell being included in this series on Christian social reformers. Many people don't like him, largely because his reputation has been smeared in recent times. Thomas Pakenham, better known as Lord Longford, in his book on the Boer War, accused Baden-Powell of starving the black African refugee population at Mafeking so that he could feed his men. When Tim Jewell wrote Baden-Powell's biography, he examined the source material for this accusation and found it to be untrue. Everyone at Mafeking had been fed up until Christmas of 1899. After Christmas, there were problems escorting the refugees safely out of Mafeking, as they were attacked by the Boers when they tried to leave. As a result of this, food kitchens inside Mafeking were organised. All the cavalry reserve horse were slaughtered in order to help feed the refugees, so destroying any mobility that the British force had. One of the main reasons that people today are trying to cancel Baden-Powell is his supposed links with fascism. However, Baden-Powell always rejected socialist eugenics and other fascist creeds. He supported some of the youth movements in Europe in the 1930s, as he thought they were empowering to young people. However, the policy of the Boy Scout movement towards the Hitler Youth was formulated in 1935 and said quite clearly that any contact with the Hitler Youth was undesirable. The following year, in 1836, there was a formal embargo on all activities with the Hitler Youth. Other accusations have been made against Baden-Powell, but the mud never sticks. He was a practical Christian man with a vision for improving the lives of young people. Baden-Powell always had a clear vision and a heart for young people. He wanted them to be self-reliant, resourceful, and prepared for anything. It was, for its time, a very liberating idea. However, he also wanted young people to have good values based on Christian principles. This is why I have included him in this series on social reformers. He saw what was needed and committed his life towards that goal. Like the others, he was a practical person, not a theologian or even formally very religious. He simply had God's heart for young people and saw faith in God as a cornerstone of the scouting movement, a movement which spread all over the world. Today, scouting is the world's leading educational youth movement, empowering 57 million young people and volunteers to be active global citizens and agents of change in their communities. I believe it's really been a force for good in the world. So thank you for listening. If you found this video interesting, you can find more information at prophecy-workshop.com.